The woman who stole my life. They say you know your husband. That after 12 years of marriage, you can read his moods like weather patterns, predict his needs before he voices them, finish his sentences in that annoying way that makes dinner parties awkward. I believed that. God, I believed that so completely. Richard Clinton wasn't just my husband. He was my college sweetheart. The man who proposed under the Brooklyn Bridge on a Tuesday afternoon because he said he couldn't wait for something more planned, more perfect. The father of my 2 children. The man who still kissed my forehead every morning before leaving for work. The CEO of Clinton and Associates, one of the fastest-growing tech firms in New York. And when I decided to surprise him at his office last month, when I walked up to that building carrying his favorite lunch because he'd been working late for weeks, when I told the security guard at the entrance that I was Mrs. Clinton, Richard's wife. He laughed at me. Not a polite chuckle. A full, genuine laugh that made his belly shake. "Ma'am," he said, still smiling, "I see Mr. Clinton's wife every single day. In fact, there she is right now, coming out of the elevator." And I watched a woman I'd never seen before walk across that lobby like she owned it. Designer heels clicking against marble. Wedding ring catching the afternoon light. Security nodding at her with the familiarity of routine. She looked nothing like me. My name is Rose Clinton. I'm 42 years old. I've been married for 12 years. I have 2 children who call Richard Daddy without hesitation. And I just discovered I've been living someone else's life. This is the story of how I found out my entire marriage was a lie. How the man sleeping beside me every night had built a completely separate existence. How I was the secret, not the wife. This is also the story of what I did next. Because sometimes, the betrayal is so complete, so perfectly constructed, that the only response is patience. Let me take you back to the beginning. To 3 months before that day at the office. To when I first noticed the small things that didn't quite fit. But before I continue, I need you to do something for me. If you've ever trusted someone completely, if you've ever ignored that small voice in your head because you wanted to believe everything was fine, if you've ever discovered that the person you thought you knew was actually a stranger, subscribe to this channel right now. Because what happened next, what I uncovered, what I learned about the man I shared a bed with for over a decade, it's going to change how you see marriage. How you see trust. How you see the stories people tell about their lives. And if you don't subscribe, if you scroll past this story, you'll spend the rest of your week wondering how it ends. Wondering what I found. Wondering if maybe, just maybe, you're ignoring the same signs I did. Hit that subscribe button. You'll thank me later. Now, let me tell you about the woman I used to be. 3 months ago, I would have described my life as blessed. Not perfect, because I'm not naive enough to believe in perfect, but steady. Predictable in the way that brings comfort, not boredom. We lived in a brownstone in Park Slope. The kind of neighborhood where people know each other's names, where the coffee shop remembers your order, where Halloween is a community event that takes weeks to plan. I was a freelance graphic designer. Worked from home mostly, which was perfect when the kids were younger. Now they're 10 and 8, old enough to be in school full days, old enough that I'd been thinking about going back to office work. Getting back out there, Richard called it, always supportive. Richard. God, even his name felt safe. We met at Columbia. I was studying design, he was in business school. He noticed me at a campus coffee shop because I was sketching in a notebook instead of typing on a laptop like everyone else. Said it made me interesting. Different. Our courtship was the kind you tell your daughters about. Slow walks through Central Park. Late-night diners where we'd talk until they kicked us out. That proposal on the bridge, so spontaneous I didn't even have my nails done in the photos. The wedding was small. His mother had already passed, and his father was distant, so it was mostly my family. My parents, my sister Nicole, my cousins from Trinidad who flew up and brought that island energy that made everything feel like celebration. My father walked me down the aisle. You chose well, Rose, he whispered before giving me away. That's a man who'll take care of you. Daddy died 2 years later. Heart attack. Sudden. The kind that makes you realize how fragile everything is. Richard held me through that grief. Weeks of it. Months. He took over everything, the kids, the house, the bills, while I barely functioned. He never complained. Never made me feel like a burden. Take your time, he'd say. I've got everything handled. I believed him. When I think about those years now, I remember them as good. Emma was born a year after we married. Then Jacob 2 years later. Richard's company was growing, which meant longer hours, but he never missed the important things. School plays. Soccer games. Birthday parties where he'd be the dad organizing games in the backyard. We had couple friends. The Johnsons from Emma's school. The Patels from yoga class. Normal people living normal lives. We had date nights. Every other Friday, without fail. Nothing fancy usually. Dinner at our favorite Italian place in the neighborhood. Sometimes a movie. Once in a while, we'd get adventurous and try that new Jamaican spot everyone raved about, and I'd laugh at Richard trying to handle the spice level. We had a life. At least, I thought we did. See, this is what I'm learning now. A life can be real for one person and completely fictional for another. You can be living your truth while someone else is performing a role. And I was so deep in my truth that I couldn't see the performance. It started with his phone. That sounds cliché, doesn't it? The suspicious wife, the secretive husband, the phone that becomes a barrier between them. But clichés exist because they're true, because they happen so often that they become recognizable patterns. About 6 months ago, Richard changed his phone passcode. We'd always known each other's codes. Not because we were checking up on each other, but because it was practical. Grab my phone and check that message, he'd say while driving. Use my phone to order pizza, mine's dead, I'd say while mine charged. Then one morning, I tried to unlock his phone to silence an alarm while he was in the shower, and the code didn't work. When I mentioned it later, casual, no accusation in my voice, he said, "Oh yeah, security protocols at work. Had to change all my passwords." Made sense. He was CEO. They handled sensitive information. Except he didn't tell me the new code. I didn't ask. Asking felt like I didn't trust him. And we had trust. Trust was our foundation. Then there were the late nights. Richard had always worked hard. That's how you build a company. But the frequency changed. 3 nights a week became 4. Then 5. Sometimes 6. Big project, he'd explain, kissing my forehead as he grabbed his briefcase at 7 p.m., already dressed from his morning shower. Should wrap up soon. But soon never came. The project apparently had complications. Then another project started. Then an investor situation required attention. I didn't question it. This was his career. His passion. The thing that provided the life we had. What kind of wife complains about her husband working hard? The business trips increased too. Boston. Chicago. San Francisco. Once a month became twice a month. Sometimes just overnight, sometimes 3 or 4 days. He'd FaceTime with the kids before bedtime. "Daddy misses you," he'd say, and Emma would show him her latest drawing, and Jacob would tell him about soccer practice, and everything felt normal. Except I started noticing he always called from hotel rooms. Never restaurants. Never offices. Never in transit. Just those generic hotel rooms with their beige walls and corporate art. "Long day," he'd say when I mentioned it. Just easier to call from the room. I accepted that. There was the time I showed up at his office unannounced about 8 months ago. Not for any suspicious reason, I happened to be in Manhattan for a client meeting and thought we could grab lunch. The receptionist, a young woman I'd never met, looked confused when I introduced myself as Richard's wife. "Oh," she said, recovering quickly. "Mr. Clinton isn't in today. He's at the satellite office in Midtown." We didn't have a satellite office. At least, he'd never mentioned one. When I asked him about it later, he explained they'd just opened it. "Forgot to mention it," he said. "Everything's been so chaotic." I believed him. His credit card statements started coming to his office instead of home. "Easier for accounting," he said. Company expenses mixed in. He stopped wearing his wedding ring to work. "New safety protocol," he explained. "Jewelry can be a security risk in the server rooms." He never worked in the server rooms. But I didn't say that. His mother's birthday. We'd always visited her grave together, every year since she passed before we met. Last April, he said he'd already gone, early morning before work, didn't want to wake me. Thoughtful, right? Except Richard's mother was buried in New Jersey. He would have had to leave at 5 a.m. to make it there and back before work. I never checked if he actually went. These weren't big things. Not individually. They were the kind of small inconsistencies that happen in any long marriage. People get busy. Routines change. You adapt. But looking back now, I see them differently. They were breadcrumbs. Little pieces of truth he accidentally dropped while constructing the lie. And I ignored every single one. There's something that happens when you love someone for a long time. You learn to read their moods, yes. But you also learn to read yourself through their reactions. If Richard said I was being paranoid, I must be paranoid. If he said I was overreacting, I must be overreacting. If he looked at me with that patient expression, the one that said he understood I was stressed but I wasn't seeing things clearly, then I wasn't seeing things clearly. I became very good at explaining things away. The perfume smell on his jacket once? Someone at work must have worn too much in the elevator. Enclosed space, scent lingers. Makes sense. The woman's voice I heard in the background during a late-night work call? His assistant, working late too. Professional dedication. Admirable. The receipt I found in his pants pocket for a restaurant we'd never been to? Client dinner. He mentioned it, didn't he? I must have forgotten. I started questioning my own memory. I told you about the Midtown office, he'd say, patient but slightly exasperated. Had he? Maybe he had. I was juggling the kids' schedules, my client work, the house. Maybe I hadn't been paying attention. I mentioned the trip to Atlanta weeks ago, Rose. Did he? I couldn't remember. The weeks all blurred together. Maybe I had missed it. I began apologizing for things I wasn't sure I'd done wrong. Sorry, I should have checked the calendar. Sorry, I must have misunderstood. Sorry, you're right, I'm probably just tired. My sister Nicole visited from Toronto last Christmas. We were having wine in the kitchen, kids asleep upstairs, Richard working late again. He's never home anymore, she observed, not accusatory, just noting. I defended him. He's building something important. It takes sacrifice. Your sacrifice, she said quietly. Not his. I laughed it off. That's marriage. Partnership. We take turns carrying the weight. But later that night, alone in bed, her words sat in my stomach like stones. When had I last carried anything but weight? I pushed the thought away. Nicole was divorced. She was projecting her failed marriage onto mine. We were different. Richard and I were solid. I told myself that a lot. We're solid. We're fine. Every marriage has phases. I stopped calling him at work unless absolutely necessary. I'd called once about Emma being sick at school, needing to be picked up, and his assistant said he was in a meeting. When I said it was an emergency, she came back and said he'd call me right back. He didn't call for 3 hours. Sorry, babe. Meeting went long and my phone died. I'd seen his phone light up with notifications during dinner that same evening. But I didn't mention it. I started preparing scripts in my head before talking to him. Rehearsing how to bring things up in ways that wouldn't sound accusatory or paranoid or like I didn't trust him. Hey, just wondering about the schedule this week. Not a big deal, but I noticed. Can you help me understand? I became smaller. Quieter. Less certain about everything. The woman who'd run her own design business, who'd negotiated with difficult clients, who'd once told off a landlord trying to illegally raise our rent, that woman faded. In her place was someone who second-guessed everything. Who apologized constantly. Who swallowed doubts like pills. And the worst part? I didn't even notice it happening. You don't see yourself shrinking when you do it inch by inch. It was Emma who changed everything. Not intentionally. She was just being 10. We were having breakfast, a Tuesday morning in late February. Richard had already left for work, early meeting. Emma was finishing her cereal, backpack already by the door. Mom, she said, not looking up from her bowl, why does Daddy have 2 phones? I paused, coffee cup halfway to my mouth. What do you mean, sweetie? He has 2 phones. I saw them last weekend when we went to his office. There was one on his desk and one in his drawer. The drawer one buzzed and I saw it when I went to borrow a pen. My heart did something strange. A skip, maybe. Or a stop. You must have seen his old phone. He probably keeps it as a backup. She shrugged. Maybe. But it was buzzing. With messages. She went back to her cereal. To her, this was nothing. Just an observation. To me, it was a crack in the foundation. That evening, after the kids were asleep, I did something I'd never done in 12 years of marriage. I went through Richard's home office. Not thoroughly. I wasn't ready for thoroughly. Just carefully. Looking for I didn't know what. In his desk drawer, under some folders, I found a phone charger that didn't match any phone we owned. iPhone, but an older model. Richard had upgraded to the newest model last year. Why would he need a charger for a phone he didn't have? Unless he did have it. Just not at home. I found a business card wedged in a book on his shelf. Riverside Apartments, it read. Luxury living in downtown Manhattan. We didn't know anyone at Riverside Apartments. I found a receipt, dated 3 weeks ago, from a jewelry store I recognized. Tiffany's. $3,400. I hadn't received any jewelry from Tiffany's. It was Valentine's Day around that time. Richard had given me flowers. Beautiful roses, my favorite. A sweet card. To my rose, it said. Forever yours. But not $3,400 worth of jewelry. I sat on the floor of his office, these small pieces of evidence in my hands, and felt the world tilt. This is when most people would confront. Demand answers. Wave the receipt and ask questions. I didn't. I don't know if it was fear or denial or some survival instinct that told me knowledge was power and I didn't have enough knowledge yet. I put everything back exactly as I found it. I went to bed. When Richard came home an hour later, I pretended to be asleep. The next morning, I made breakfast like always. Kissed him goodbye like always. Told him to have a good day like always. But something had shifted. I started paying attention. Really paying attention. I noticed he showered at odd times. Before leaving for work, yes, but also sometimes when he came home late. Just need to wash off the day, he'd say. I noticed his gym bag in his car had cologne in it. Who brings cologne to the gym? I noticed he'd started getting his hair cut at a new place. Nicer place. More expensive. You look good, I told him after one of these haircuts. Thanks, babe, he said, kissing my cheek. Got a presentation this week. Want to look sharp. The presentation was with investors he'd been working with for months. People who'd already decided to fund the company. Why did he need to look extra sharp? I started checking the mileage on his car. Just noting the numbers when he left, checking them when he returned. His late nights at the office involved driving 60, 70, sometimes 80 extra miles. His office was 12 miles from our house. I created a fake email address and sent a message to Clinton and Associates General Inquiry. Is Richard Clinton available for a meeting on Friday the 15th? The response came from his assistant, Mr. Clinton will be traveling that week. When I asked him about his schedule that night, he said Friday was clear. Should be a quiet end to the week. So where was he traveling? Or more accurately, who was he traveling with? I want to be clear about something. I didn't go to his office that day to catch him. Not exactly. Part of me still wanted to be wrong. Wanted there to be an explanation. Wanted the man I'd loved for 15 years to be exactly who I thought he was. It was a Thursday. March 21st. I remember because it was 3 days after Emma's birthday party, and I was still finding pieces of confetti in weird places around the house. Richard had mentioned working through lunch, big deadline. I'd made his favorite meal the night before, my grandmother's jerk chicken recipe, the one from Trinidad that takes hours to marinate properly, and he'd barely touched it. Just stressed, he'd said. Deadline brain. You know how it is. I did know. Or I thought I did. That morning, I packed up the leftovers in a nice container. Added some of the festival bread he loved. A mango I'd sliced the way he preferred. I told myself I was being a supportive wife. Bringing lunch to my hard-working husband. But I was dressed nicer than necessary for a simple food drop-off. I'd done my makeup. Worn the heels he always said made my legs look incredible. I parked in the visitor lot of Clinton and Associates at 12:30 p.m. The building was impressive. Glass and steel, modern, the kind of place that announced success. I'd been there before, of course. The Christmas party 2 years ago. The open house when they first moved in. But never unannounced. Never as a surprise. I walked through the revolving door into the lobby. Marble floors. High ceilings. A massive abstract sculpture that probably cost more than our first car. The security desk was ahead. A guard I didn't recognize sat there, maybe late 50s, with the kind of face that suggested he'd seen everything and wasn't impressed by any of it. Good afternoon, I said, smiling. Professional but warm. I'm here to see Richard Clinton. I'm his wife, Rose. I held up the lunch container like evidence. He looked at me. Really looked at me. And then he smiled. Not a polite smile. A confused one. Almost amused. Ma'am, he said, his Caribbean accent thick, Jamaican. I thought, from the cadence, I see Mr. Clinton's wife every single day. My stomach dropped. I am his wife, I said, voice steady even though nothing inside me was steady. He shook his head, still smiling like I was confused. No, ma'am. Mrs. Clinton comes through here every morning around 9:30. Sometimes at lunch. Definitely at the end of the day. I know Mrs. Clinton. The elevator dinged behind him. In fact, he said, gesturing, there she is right now. I turned. And I watched someone else live my life. She was tall. Maybe 5'9". Slender in that way that comes from effort and discipline. Hair in a sleek ponytail, darker than mine, straighter. She wore a cream-colored suit that probably cost what I spent on groceries in a month. Professional. Polished. Put together in a way I'd stopped being somewhere between Emma's birth and Jacob's terrible twos. She carried a designer bag on one arm. Her left hand, I couldn't stop staring at her left hand, wore a wedding ring. Not just any ring. A ring that looked almost identical to mine. She walked across that lobby like she owned it. Heels clicking with confidence. She nodded at the security guard. "Have a good afternoon, Mrs. Clinton," he said. She smiled. "You too, Peter." She knew his name. She pushed through the revolving door and was gone. I stood there, lunch container still in my hands, feeling like I'd been dropped into someone else's reality. Peter looked at me, his confusion shifting to something like concern. "Ma'am? You all right?" I could have corrected him then. Could have demanded to see Richard. Could have caused a scene. Instead, I heard myself say, "I'm sorry. I must have the wrong building. My mistake." "No problem, ma'am. You have a good day now." I walked back to my car. Sat in the driver's seat. And the world ended. Not dramatically. Not with screaming or crying or anything visible. It ended quietly. The way a foundation cracks before the house falls down. I didn't go home. I couldn't. The kids wouldn't be back from school for hours. The house would be empty. And empty houses echo. I drove. Just drove. Through Manhattan, across the bridge into Brooklyn, nowhere specific, just moving because stopping meant thinking and thinking meant facing what I'd just seen. But you can't outrun your own thoughts. They caught up at a red light on Flatbush Avenue. Richard had another wife. Not a girlfriend. Not an affair. A wife. Someone who went to his office every day. Someone the security guard knew by name. Someone who wore a wedding ring and got called Mrs. Clinton without irony or confusion. How long? That was the first question that broke through the shock. How long had she existed? The security guard said he saw her every day. That implied routine. History. Time. Was she there when I was pregnant with Emma? With Jacob? Was she there at our anniversary dinners while I toasted to 12 years of marriage? Was she there when my father died and Richard held me while I cried? The light turned green. Someone honked. I drove. I found myself in Prospect Park. Parked near the lake where Richard and I used to bring the kids to feed ducks when they were little. I sat on a bench. Elderly couples walked past. Joggers. A mom with a stroller. Normal people having normal days. I tried to piece it together logically. Richard left the house every morning around 7:30. Came home between 7 and 9 most nights. Sometimes later. If she saw him every morning at 9:30, he was stopping somewhere between home and work. Where? That apartment building. Riverside Apartments. The business card in his office. He had another home. Another life. When he said he was working late, was he with her? When he traveled for business, was he taking her? That Tiffany's receipt. Valentine's Day. He'd given me roses. He'd given her $3,400 worth of jewelry. My hands started shaking. Not dramatic trembling. Just small vibrations, like my body was trying to process what my mind couldn't. I took out my phone. Googled Riverside Apartments, Manhattan. Luxury high-rise. One bedroom starting at $4,500 a month. 2 bedrooms at $6,800. I knew our finances. I managed the household accounts. Richard's company paid him well, but not well enough to maintain 2 households without me noticing. Unless he'd been hiding money. I logged into our bank accounts on my phone. Checking, savings, both joint. Everything looked normal. Regular deposits. Regular withdrawals for mortgage, utilities, groceries. But Richard had accounts I didn't have access to. Business accounts. Investment accounts. Boring financial stuff, he'd always said. I'll handle it. I'd let him. I pulled up our credit card statements. Only the one that came to the house. Charges I recognized. Grocery stores. Gas stations. The kids' soccer club fees. But there was that other card. The one that went to his office now. The one I hadn't seen a statement for in 8 months. How much was on it? I called our credit card company from my phone. I need to check the balance on account ending in 4782. I'll need to verify some information. What's your name? Rose Clinton. My husband and I share the account. I'm sorry, Mrs. Clinton, but I can't provide information on that account. It's listed as business use only, single authorized user. But it's a joint account. According to our records, your name was removed as an authorized user in August of last year. August. 7 months ago. Who requested that change? The account holder, Richard Clinton. I thanked her and hung up. He'd removed me from our own credit card. Blocked my access. And I hadn't even noticed because the statement stopped coming to the house and I stopped thinking about it. What else hadn't I noticed? I went home eventually. Had to. The kids would be back from school. Emma got off the bus talking about a science project. Jacob complained about a kid who'd cheated at tetherball. Normal childhood dramas. I made them snacks. Asked about homework. Listened to their stories. And felt like I was performing. Playing the role of mom while someone else wore my face. Richard texted around 5, running late. Don't wait for dinner. I made pasta for the kids. We ate. I checked homework. Supervised baths. Read bedtime stories. Jacob asked where Daddy was. Working late, I said. He'll kiss you goodnight when he gets home. He's always working late, Jacob said, not upset, just observing. He works hard for us, I said automatically. Emma, already half asleep, mumbled, or for his other family. I froze. What? But she was asleep. Or pretending to be. Had she said that? Had I imagined it? Richard came home at 10:30. I was in bed, lights off, eyes open. He came into the bedroom quietly, thinking I was asleep. I heard him undress. The rustle of clothes. The clink of his belt buckle. He got into bed. I lay there, inches from a stranger, and said nothing. The next morning, Friday, I woke up before everyone. Made coffee. Started breakfast. Richard came downstairs in his suit. Freshly showered. That cologne I didn't recognize. Morning, babe, he said, kissing my forehead. The kiss felt like fire. Morning, I managed. What are your plans today? Client work. Laundry. The usual. He nodded, already distracted by his phone. I'll probably be late again. This project's killing me. Which project? He looked up, caught off guard. You said the project's killing you. Which one? Oh. The Meridian acquisition. Lots of moving parts. Right. Meridian. I'd checked his company website last night. There was no Meridian acquisition mentioned anywhere. No press releases. No announcements. When did that start? I asked casually. Few months ago. Hey, you okay? You seem off. Just tired. He studied me for a moment. You should rest. Take a day. I can handle dinner with the kids if I make it home in time. You won't, I said. Probably not, he admitted. But I'll try. He kissed my forehead again and left. I waited until his car was gone. Then I called my sister. Nicole, I need you to listen to something. And I need you not to tell me I'm crazy. I told her everything. The lunch surprise. The other woman. The security guard. The apartment. The credit card. She was silent for a long time. Rose, she finally said, her voice shaking, you need a lawyer. I need proof first. You have proof. You saw her. I saw a woman. I need to know who she is. How long? Everything. Why? What difference does it make? Because, I stopped. Why did it matter? Because I needed to understand. Needed to know if any of it had been real. If the man I'd loved for 15 years had ever existed at all. I'm coming down, Nicole said. I'll be there by tomorrow afternoon. You don't have to. Yes, I do. You're not handling this alone. That weekend, while Richard was on another business trip to Boston, Nicole and I went through everything. We found more. A second phone number, listed under his name, that I'd never known about. Email accounts I couldn't access. Calendar entries that didn't match what he'd told me. Boston trip according to the confirmation email in his junk folder that he'd probably deleted from his main inbox. Wasn't Boston. Was Miami. 2 tickets. One in his name. One for Amanda Clinton. Amanda. Her name was Amanda. Nicole wanted me to confront him immediately. Rage, scream, throw his clothes on the lawn. Typical divorce dramatics. I couldn't. Not yet. I need to understand the scope, I told her. Before I blow this up, I need to know exactly what I'm dealing with. You're dealing with a man who has 2 wives, she said flatly. But I need details. For the lawyers. For custody. For everything that comes after. Also, truthfully, I wasn't ready. Confronting Richard meant the end. Meant admitting my marriage was over. Meant telling the kids. Meant explaining to my mother, my cousins, everyone who'd celebrated our wedding. Meant acknowledging I'd been a fool. So I investigated instead. On Monday, after dropping the kids at school, I drove to Manhattan. Riverside Apartments was easy to find. A beautiful building overlooking the East River. Doorman. Valet parking. The kind of place you see in magazines. I sat in my car across the street. At 8:45 a.m., Richard's car pulled up. He got out. Handed his keys to the valet. The staff greeted him by name. He walked inside. 20 minutes later, Amanda came out. She wore workout clothes. Expensive ones. Lululemon, probably. She looked like she was heading to one of those boutique fitness classes. She got into a BMW I didn't recognize. Drove away. I waited. At 9:35, Richard emerged. Back in his suit. He got his car from the valet. And drove to his office. So his morning routine, leave our house in Brooklyn, drive to Manhattan, change clothes at an apartment with another woman, then go to work. Our marriage started and ended with costume changes. I followed him over the next week. Carefully. Using Nicole's rental car so he wouldn't recognize mine. Every morning, same routine. Apartment first. Office second. Some evenings, he went straight from the office back to the apartment. Stayed for hours. Then drove back to Brooklyn, to our house, to our bed. Some evenings, he went to restaurants with Amanda. Nice places. The kind we used to go to for anniversaries but hadn't in years. Once, I watched them through the window of an Italian restaurant in Soho. They shared a bottle of wine. They laughed. At one point, she reached across the table and took his hand. He looked at her the way he used to look at me. Or maybe he never looked at me that way. Maybe I'd imagined it all. I hired a private investigator. Professional. Expensive. Recommended by Nicole's divorce attorney. I need documentation, I told him. Photographs. Timeline. Everything you can find. He delivered within a week. Amanda Wallace. Age 34. Marketing executive. Originally from California. They'd met 7 years ago at a tech conference. His company had been exhibiting. She was attending. 7 years. 7 years of this double life. They'd gotten married, if you could call it that, 5 years ago. No legal marriage, obviously, since he was already married to me. But they'd had a ceremony. Small, private, at a boutique hotel in upstate New York. She thought she was his only wife. That detail stopped me cold. She didn't know about me. I'd been imagining her as the villain. The other woman who'd stolen my husband. The homewrecker. But she thought she was the wife. The only wife. She was being lied to too. The PI's report included financial details that made my stomach turn. Richard had been funneling money from his business into personal accounts Amanda had access to. Not illegal exactly, since he owned the company, but ethically questionable. Money that should have been reinvested or distributed to investors. The apartment cost $6,800 a month. He paid it. Her car lease. He paid it. Her gym membership, her shopping, her lifestyle. He paid for all of it. Meanwhile, I'd been clipping coupons. Buying generic brands. Telling the kids we couldn't afford Disney World this year. We could have afforded it. He just chose to spend the money elsewhere. The PI also found something else. Something that made everything worse. Amanda was pregnant. 3 months along. There were photos. Her at a doctor's appointment. Her with a visible bump in tight workout clothes. Her and Richard shopping at a baby store in Manhattan. Richard touching her stomach. Richard smiling at her stomach. I locked myself in the bathroom and cried for the first time since this started. Real crying. The kind that comes from somewhere deep and doesn't stop. Nicole found me there an hour later. "Oh, honey," she said, holding me while I shook. "He's having a baby with her." "I know. He told me he didn't want more kids. After Jacob, he said 2 was perfect. He said we were complete." "I know." "Was any of it real, Nicole? Any of it?" She didn't answer. Because we both knew she couldn't. I waited until he was home for a full evening. A Tuesday, 2 weeks after I'd first gone to his office. The kids were at my mother's. I'd told her I needed a night to work on a big client project. She'd been happy to take them. Richard came home at 7, surprised to find me alone. "Where are the kids?" "Mom's. I thought we could use a night. Just us." He smiled. Genuinely pleased. "That sounds nice. Order takeout?" I made dinner. Your favorite. I'd spent 3 hours on that jerk chicken. The way my grandmother taught me. The way I'd made it 1,000 times for him. One last meal. We ate at the dining room table. Candles lit. Wine poured. He talked about work. Some problem with investors. I listened. Nodded. Asked follow-up questions. Normal. After dinner, we moved to the living room. He poured himself scotch. Sat on the couch. I sat across from him. "Richard," I said. "I need to ask you something." "Sure, babe." "What's up?" "Who's Amanda?" I watched his face. Watched the exact moment he understood. His hand tightened on the scotch glass. His jaw clenched. His eyes went from confused to calculating in half a second. "Who?" "Amanda. Amanda Clinton. Or does she use Wallace still?" He set down the scotch. "Rose. I went to your office. 2 weeks ago. Wanted to surprise you with lunch. He closed his eyes. The security guard told me he sees your wife every day. Then she walked out. Tall, dark hair, cream suit. Wedding ring that looks just like mine. Let me explain. I hired a private investigator. I have photos, Richard. Dates, times, places. I know about the apartment. The separate accounts. The money you've been hiding. I know you've been with her for 7 years. I know you had some kind of ceremony with her 5 years ago. I know, my voice cracked, but I pushed through. I know she's pregnant. He sat very still. So before you explain, before you try to spin this, I need you to just tell me the truth. Just once. Can you do that? Silence. Then, yes. It's all true. Something about hearing him confirm it, hearing him say yes, it broke something in me that hadn't broken before. Why? It's complicated. Uncomplicate it. He ran his hands through his hair. Stood. Paced. Sat back down. I met her at a conference. You and I were going through a rough patch. You remember, after Jacob was born? You had postpartum depression. You were distant. We barely talked. So you married someone else? I didn't plan it. It just happened. We connected. She understood the work I was doing. She was interested in it. Interested in me. I was interested in you. I was just exhausted from taking care of our infant son while you worked 80-hour weeks. I know. I know that now. But at the time, I felt alone. She made me feel seen. So you saw her. That's an affair, Richard. People have affairs. They don't create entire alternate lives. It escalated. She wanted more commitment. I couldn't lose her. So I told her we could be together. Did you tell her about me? He looked away. No. So she thinks she's your wife. Your only wife. Yes. And the baby? We've been trying for a year. Those words hit like physical blows. While I was negotiating with Emma's school about tuition payment plans. While I was explaining to Jacob why we couldn't afford new soccer cleats yet. While I was calling my mother to borrow money for the mortgage. He was trying to have a baby with someone else. Do you love her? I asked. Rose. Do you love her? Yes. Do you love me? He hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. I love both of you. In different ways. That's not how love works. That's not how marriage works. We can figure this out. We can all sit down. You want me to what? Share you? Co-parent with your girlfriend while pretending this is normal? She's not my girlfriend. He stopped. Your wife, I finished. She's your wife. Just like me. Except you chose her. You're having a baby with her. You spend your mornings with her and your money on her and your attention on her. You could have had more attention if you'd asked for it. And there it was. The blame shift. Somehow this was my fault. Get out, I said quietly. Rose. Get out of this house. Right now. This is my house too. Not anymore. I filed for divorce this morning. You've been served. The papers are on the kitchen counter. You're being sued for fraud, misappropriation of marital assets, and about 6 other things my lawyer is very excited about. He stared at me. You already filed? I'm not stupid, Richard. I wasn't going to confront you without protecting myself and my children first. Our children. My children. You forfeited that when you decided to start a new family. He stood. Grabbed his jacket. Walked to the door. then turned back. I never meant to hurt you. But you did. Spectacularly. For 7 years. I'm sorry. No, you're not. You're sorry you got caught. There's a difference. He left. I sat in the quiet house. Our house. That would be just my house soon. And I felt nothing. Not relief. Not sadness. Not anger. Just empty. The next few weeks were a blur of legal meetings and difficult conversations. Telling the kids was the hardest part. Emma cried. Is it because Daddy has that other family? So she had known. Or suspected. Kids always know more than we think. Jacob asked if he'd still see his dad. Of course, I said, even though I wanted to say no, even though the idea of Richard playing part-time father made me furious. Telling my mother was brutal. She'd loved Richard. Trusted him. She cried harder than I did. Telling our friends meant watching them choose sides. Some disappeared immediately. Others sent awkward texts. If you need anything. But they didn't call. Didn't visit. Didn't know how to handle the scandal. Because it was a scandal. The CEO with 2 wives. It made the local news. Richard's company scrambled to control the narrative. Amanda reached out. She sent an email. The subject line was just, "Can we talk?" I almost deleted it. Nicole told me to delete it. But I opened it. Rose. I don't know how to start this. I don't know what to say to the woman whose husband I've been married to for 5 years. I didn't know about you. I swear I didn't know. He told me his ex-wife lived in Boston with their kids. He said you were amicable but distant. He said he saw the kids every other weekend. I feel sick. I feel like my entire life is a lie. I'm pregnant. I'm having his baby. And I don't know what to do with that information now. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that I'm a victim in this too. He lied to both of us. I'm so sorry for the pain you're in. I'm in it too. Amanda. I read it 3 times. She was right. She was a victim too. But I couldn't forgive her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I deleted the email. The legal process was ugly. Richard fought the divorce. Not because he wanted to stay married, but because he didn't want to lose money. My lawyer was vicious. Good. We discovered he'd hidden nearly $800,000 in various accounts. Money that should have been marital assets. We discovered he'd listed Amanda as beneficiary on his life insurance. Not me. Not his children. We discovered he'd been planning to leave me. Once Amanda had the baby, once things were stable, he was going to file for divorce and claim he needed to find himself. The level of calculation was breathtaking. I stopped sleeping. Nightmares when I did. In them, Richard had 3 wives, 4 wives, a dozen. All of us standing in a line, interchangeable. I stopped eating properly. Lost 15 pounds in a month. I started therapy. The therapist asked me what I was feeling. Nothing, I said. I feel nothing. That's dissociation, she explained. Your mind is protecting you from trauma by numbing everything. When does it stop? When you're ready to feel it. I wasn't ready. My design work suffered. I missed deadlines. Lost clients. Couldn't focus. Money got tight. Richard was fighting the support payments. My lawyer said we'd win, but it would take time. I had to borrow money from my mother. The woman who'd raised me to be independent, to never depend on a man, and here I was, 42 years old, asking for help with mortgage payments. The humiliation was crushing. Worse was seeing Richard move on. He and Amanda stayed together. He moved into the Riverside apartment full-time. They were photographed at restaurants, at events. She was showing now, visibly pregnant, and he had his hand on her stomach in the photos. Playing devoted father-to-be. While Emma asked why Daddy didn't come to her school play. While Jacob asked why Daddy canceled their weekend again. He's busy, I'd say. Busy building a new family to replace the broken one. I started having panic attacks. Sudden. Unpredictable. In grocery stores. At Emma's soccer games. Once while driving, which terrified me. My therapist prescribed medication. I resisted. I don't want to be numb, I said. You're already numb, she replied. This will help you function while you process. I took the pills. The worst part wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the self-doubt it created. Had I been a bad wife? Inattentive? Boring? Was that why he needed someone else? Everyone said no. My sister, my therapist, my mother. But I couldn't believe them. I replayed our marriage in my mind. Looking for signs I'd missed. Looking for moments where I'd failed him. Maybe if I'd been more interesting. More attractive. More present. Maybe if I hadn't been so focused on the kids. Maybe if I'd cared more about his work. Maybe if I'd been different, better, more. My therapist kept saying it wasn't my fault. I couldn't accept that. Because if it wasn't my fault, if I'd done nothing wrong, then it meant I'd been powerless. It meant there was nothing I could have done to prevent this. And that was more terrifying than thinking I'd failed. At least failure implied some control. 3 months into the separation, Emma came home from school upset. There were girls talking, she said, crying into my shoulder. They said Daddy's a bigamist. That he's going to jail. Is that true? No, sweetheart. He's not going to jail. Bigamy wasn't technically accurate. He'd only been legally married to me. The ceremony with Amanda had no legal standing. But try explaining that nuance to a 10-year-old whose friends were gossiping about her father. That night, after the kids were asleep, I broke. Not fell apart. Broke. Like something cracking open. I called Richard. First time since he'd left. Your daughter is being bullied at school because of you, I said when he answered. Kids are calling you a bigamist. I'll talk to her. You can't fix this by talking to her. You broke our family. You humiliated us publicly. You made our children's lives harder because you wanted 2 wives. I never wanted to hurt the kids. But you did. You hurt all of us. And you're just moving on like nothing happened. Like we were disposable. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? I gave you 12 years of my life. I gave you 2 children. I supported your career, raised our kids, managed our home. I was faithful. I was present. I was a good wife. I know you were. Then why wasn't I enough? Silence. Why wasn't I enough, Richard? It wasn't about you being enough. It was about me wanting more. More than a family? More than children who love you? More than a wife who would have done anything for you? Yes. That single word clarity hurt more than any of the lies. Then I hope you and Amanda are very happy together. I hope that baby is perfect. I hope your new life is everything you wanted. Rose. And I hope one day you realize what you gave up. Not just me. Emma and Jacob. The family we built. The life we had. I hope you realize you threw away something real for something that only existed because it was forbidden and exciting. That's not what this is. Yes, it is. Amanda was interesting because she was secret. Because she was the adventure. But reality sets in, Richard. Babies cry at 3 a.m. Mortgages need paying. Life gets mundane. And when it does, will you find a third wife? A fourth? He didn't answer. Stay away from me, I said. Deal with your lawyer and see the kids on your scheduled days. But stay away from me. I hung up. And I cried. Not the numb, empty crying from before. Real crying. Angry crying. Grieving crying. I cried for the marriage I'd thought I had. I cried for the man I'd thought Richard was. I cried for my children, who'd have to navigate divorced parents and half-siblings and confusion. I cried for myself. For the years I'd lost. For the trust that had been destroyed. For the future I'd imagined that would never happen. I cried until there was nothing left. And when I was done, something shifted. Not healed. Not better. But different. I called Nicole. I need to do something, I said. Like what? I don't know. Something that's mine. Something that has nothing to do with Richard or this divorce or any of it. Like a hobby? Like a life. She was quiet for a moment. Then, remember your thesis project? The children's book illustrations? I'd almost forgotten. Senior year at Columbia, I'd illustrated a children's book for my thesis. It had been good. Really good. My professor had encouraged me to pursue publishing. But then I graduated and met Richard and life happened. What about them? You still have them? Somewhere in storage. Find them. Update them. Publish them. Nicole, I'm 42. The publishing industry doesn't want. Stop. Stop making excuses for why you can't do things. Richard spent 7 years making you small. Don't keep doing it to yourself. She was right. I found the portfolio that weekend. Dusty box in the basement. Water-damaged pages that needed rescanning. But the art was still good. I spent the next month updating it. Refining it. Learning digital illustration software. Emma watched me work one evening. That's beautiful, Mom. Thanks, baby. Is this what you wanted to do? Before us? It's what I loved doing. Having you and your brother didn't stop that. I just forgot for a while. You should remember, she said seriously. You're good at it. I submitted the book to agents. Expected rejections. Got 3 requests for the full manuscript. Then an offer. A small press. Not much money. But they wanted to publish my book. Our book, technically. I'd written the story too. I called Nicole crying. Happy crying this time. See, she said. You don't need him. She was right. I didn't need him. The divorce was finalized 8 months after I filed. Richard lost. Substantially. The judge was not impressed with his financial maneuvering. Or his moral character, as she put it. I got the house. Majority custody. Child support that would actually cover the kids' needs. And half of everything he'd hidden, plus penalties. His company took a hit. Some investors pulled out. The board considered replacing him. Amanda had her baby. A girl. They named her Claire. I learned this from Emma, who'd met her half-sister during a weekend visit. She's tiny, Emma reported. And she cries a lot. Daddy looked tired. Good, I thought. Then felt guilty for thinking it. My book was published 6 months after the divorce finalized. The Girl Who Found Her Voice, a story about a young girl who loses her ability to speak and has to find other ways to communicate her truth. Not subtle. But honest. It sold modestly. Enough for a second book deal. Enough that I could breathe financially. More importantly, it was mine. Something I'd created that Richard had no part of. I started dating again. Tentatively. Badly at first. A few awkward coffee dates. One dinner that went nowhere. A man who talked about his ex-wife for 45 minutes straight. Then I met David at a bookstore event for my book. He was there with his daughter, buying her a copy. She loves stories about brave girls, he explained. We talked. Just talked. About books and kids and life. He asked for my number. I hesitated. I'm divorced. Recently. It's complicated. Most things worth doing are, he said. We've been seeing each other for 4 months now. Nothing serious yet. But something good. He knows about Richard. About the whole mess. Everyone in New York does, honestly. That says nothing about you, he told me on our third date. It says everything about him. I'm starting to believe that. The kids are adjusting. Therapy helps. They see Richard every other weekend, Wednesday dinners. He's trying. Not hard enough, but more than nothing. Amanda sent another email recently. Asked if we could meet. Talk. She wants the kids to know each other. Emma and Jacob have a half-sister. That's a fact. Fighting it won't change it. I agreed to meet her. We sat in a coffee shop in Manhattan. Neutral territory. She looked exhausted. New mother exhausted. Thank you for coming, she said. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for the kids. I know. We talked for an hour. Not about Richard. About the children. About how to navigate this impossible situation. She apologized again. I didn't accept it. But I didn't throw my coffee at her either. Progress. He's not who I thought he was, she said quietly. The man I married. I don't think he exists. He doesn't, I confirmed. We both fell in love with a performance. Do you hate me? I thought about it. I did. I'm trying not to. You didn't know. I get that now. I should have known. There were signs. There always are. We just don't want to see them. She nodded. Claire should know her siblings. If you're okay with that. Slowly. Carefully. With therapy involved. Agreed. We're not friends. We'll never be friends. But we're not enemies either. We're two women who loved the same man and learned he wasn't worth it. I'm coming up on a year since I walked into that office building. Since the security guard laughed and showed me someone else living my life. People ask if I'm better now. If I'm healed. I don't know if you heal from something like this. I think you just learn to carry it differently. I've learned things about trust. How fragile it is. How completely it can be shattered. I've learned about intuition. How I ignored mine for years. Made excuses. Convinced myself I was being paranoid when I was actually being perceptive. I've learned about self-worth. How I'd tied mine completely to being a good wife, a good mother. How I'd made myself smaller and quieter and less demanding. How I'd apologized for having needs. I don't do that anymore. I've learned about lies. How they're not always dramatic. Sometimes they're just omissions. Sometimes they're misdirections. Sometimes they're said with a kiss on the forehead and genuine seeming affection. The scariest lies are the ones wrapped in love. I've learned about shame. How I carried so much of it. Shame that I hadn't been enough. Shame that I hadn't known. Shame that I'd been made a fool of publicly. But slowly, I'm putting that shame where it belongs. On Richard. I've learned about my children's resilience. How they're stronger than I gave them credit for. How they're sad but not broken. How they're learning to navigate complexity at ages when life should be simpler. I hate that they have to learn this. But I'm proud of how they're handling it. I've learned about my own strength. How I survived something I didn't think I could survive. How I got up every day and made breakfast and helped with homework and worked and paid bills even when I wanted to stay in bed forever. How I'm still here. I've learned about women. How we're taught to compete, but really we're often all victims of the same systems, the same lies, the same men who think they can have everything. Amanda and I aren't sisters. But we share something. An understanding. A cautionary tale. I've learned about love. Real love versus performed love. How Richard performed for both of us. How neither of us got the real him because maybe there wasn't a real him to get. How some people are just mirrors, reflecting back what you want to see. I've learned about starting over. How terrifying it is. How necessary. How at 42, with 2 kids and a broken heart and a decimated bank account, you can still build something new. It won't look like what you planned. But it'll be yours. Most importantly, I've learned about voice. For years, I silenced mine. Quieted my concerns. Swallowed my questions. Made myself smaller. Not anymore. Now I speak. I question. I demand answers. I trust my gut. Now when something feels wrong, I don't explain it away. Now I know that I'm enough. I was always enough. Richard's inability to see that was his failure, not mine. Some truths don't arrive to save you. They arrive to wake you. That day at Richard's office didn't save my marriage. It destroyed it. But it woke me up. To who I'd become. Who I'd allowed myself to become. To what I'd been accepting as normal when nothing about it was normal. To how much of myself I'd given away thinking that's what love required. I'm awake now. Not healed. Not perfect. Not without scars. But awake. I look at my children and see them watching me. Learning from me. Learning what to accept. What to tolerate. What to demand. And I know I'm teaching them something important now. I'm teaching them that betrayal doesn't break you permanently. That truth, however painful, is better than beautiful lies. That starting over isn't failure, sometimes it's the bravest choice. That your voice matters. Your intuition matters. Your worth matters. And that you don't need someone else to validate your existence. Richard gave me 12 years. Some were probably real, most were performance. But he doesn't get any more. The rest of my years are mine. My name is Rose Clinton. I'm 42 years old. I was married to a man who lived a double life for 7 years. And I survived it. This is my story. Not the story of the woman who was betrayed. The story of the woman who woke up. If this story touched you, if you've ever ignored your intuition or made yourself smaller for someone else's comfort, if you've ever discovered that the life you thought you had was actually a carefully constructed lie, subscribe to this channel. Because your story matters. Your truth matters. Your awakening matters. And maybe, just maybe, hearing mine will help you recognize yours. End.